pottery is actually moral and correct. And second, we're going to talk about whether or not this is feasible and this will work, and how this is going to harm children in the very long term and the short term. So let's go on to first of all rebuttals to the opening government side, right? So two main questions that are going to have to be posed by them and be answered by them. First of all, why does this have to be in this format and in this way, right? Because as Kaito-san said, he wants to mix everyone up, have people have interactions, just put them in a very diverse school, just put them in like a very diverse like basket of places, right? There's no absolute need to have someone take your child away from you, take something you made on your own away from you and have it for this reason. We don't see why this has to be so extreme. Secondly, he answered the point of the fact that this will not work for one generation. Short term, it will be really bad. I want to know then, when is this actually going to work? When will these benefits actually accrue, right? Because if you, for example, have a white racist raise a black child with a lot of hate, a lot of antipathy, that black child is going to grow up to hate white people, and that's going to be an extreme cycle going on, where you're going to have this problem of antipathy going forever and ever, right? Meaning the fact that this is actually not tackling the problem of, like, for example, racism that we had, but just having this blanket cover-up of the idea that this is going to be a short-term problem, a short-term solution, and we don't think that they have been able to prove the fact of how long-term this is actually going to work in any way, or even short-term considering the fact that they conceded that it isn't going to work. So let's go on to the first point about whether or not this is moral or correct, right? So we think that fundamentally there's going to be two large harms that are going to happen here. First of all, the extreme mental burden on the parents, right? If you, for example, have seen a mother who has lost their child, you understand the fact that losing a child for someone, whether or not you've had them or not, because miscarriages are just as traumatizing, is extremely traumatizing for that mother, right? But furthermore, knowing that that child exists somewhere, and knowing the fact that he's out there having a perfectly living out there without you, we think is something that is extremely mentally excruciating to some mothers, especially those who find some extreme importance in having a connection, like a DNA connection with their children, right? And we think that that it is unjust to put those individuals through so much pain of their own, considering the fact that this social problem and these social inequalities is not something that they have created, right? So considering the fact that it has been a locus of, for example, capitalism, generations of inequality that, for example, have been made by the government in many cases, we don't think it's right to use, I hate using this term, but use them as a battering ram in order to solve these kinds of social problems, and we don't think that is just. We think they need to justify this. No. Secondly, we think that furthermore, why is this unjust? Secondly, we think that considering the fact that individuals have made the financial investment and the physical commitment to make a child, they have the right to, for example, keep it, right? Now, what do I mean by this? It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of energy for you to find a partner. In order for you guys, for example, have a child, that's going to take a lot of physical investment. For people who can't have children, it's going to take also a monetary investment of having those kinds of treatments, right? And we think that considering the fact that you, as an individual, have made those kinds of decisions, have put in that kind of effort, the government who just stood there and watched you and did not help you in any form of way in many cases, has no right to suddenly take all of that away from you and say, it's not even like a part of the child, right? It's 100% of the child. Meaning the fact it's like taking 100% of your income because of the fact that, like, for example, the government has a right to do that. We don't think the government has the right to this, no. But furthermore, what is the closest analogy to this in our real world? We think there's something like, for example, conscription, right? Where you are forced to, for example, play into the country because of the fact that there is no other way out. You have to protect them. Two differences here. First of all, in many cases for conscription, this is the only option to do this. But secondly, in many cases for conscription, they actually give exemptions, for example, mental health and physical health, right? Meaning the fact that in those cases of extreme mental health, you are also exempted from the side of things, meaning the fact that my previous argument of that also stands.
So, in the context where technology or this policy is implemented, there's no expectation for couple to own their own bio child. So, why is the loss of the children argument relevant?
Yeah.
I'm not saying the fact that like losing the child is not relevant. I'm saying the mental burden that comes from that is also something that's very harmful. Knowing the fact that if you're going to be carrying that child for 9 months, we think that considering that is going to lead to an attachment, even if you don't meet that child, and even if you don't actually have a physical way. We don't think that that's fair on us in like the opposition side, considering the fact that it was not announced in the slides, or furthermore, it was not announced by the AC in that case. Secondly, will this actually work, right? We think that when you talk about the birth lottery, you talk about 3 main things. A, an unfairness in income, unfairness in gender, and unfairness in, for example, like upbringing with their parents, right? So A, on the point of income and gender, that's not going to change whether you have this birth lottery or not, right? Because there's still going to be richer parents, there's still going to be poorer parents and poorer locations. So in that way, gender stereotypes are still going to exist. So that's not going to be solved. And the idea of like looks and education isn't going to be solved either, right? So the second thing that comes about is then the relationship with the parent. Is this going to be better in their paradigm? We say it absolutely is not for 2 main things. First, so the very cliche argument, the biological connection, but more importantly, you are going to have a parent who cannot connect with that child based on things like identity, on things like culture, and on things like religion. And we think that there are very fundamental reasons for communities and people to be tied together. Why is this so harmful? A, we think this will lead to very bad parenting, which a parenting situation without love is not a good one. But secondly, it will lead to children not having that form of identity, which really helps them in their identity formation, in the way that they guide and choose make their choices throughout their lives. But secondly, we think that things like hate will happen, right? If you are innately very do not like black people, you are not going to suddenly come across a child and be like, I no longer see race anymore, right? We think that instead you are going to batter that child, you're going to hurt that child, and that's going to lead to what happens is that you have maybe a social change, a tangible, possible to happen, but on our side, you have a tangible harm to children, a tangible harm to parents, and we think if you measure those up, you should take the absolute, and for that reason, we oppose.